All right, it's time for another episode of the Nerdy Virgin Podcast. That was a weak opening. Could we do a stronger opening? All right, people. All right. You want another Nerdy Virgin Podcast? Fine, I'll give it to you. Fine. Here it is. Take it. Take all of it. That's my favorite trope, especially in superhero movies. When a character has a power and the bad guy wants the good guy's power. And the way that the good guy defeats the bad guy in the climax is the good guy gives the bad guy all of the good guy's power, and it overwhelms the bad guy. And the good guy says, "You want it. You want the power. Take it. Take it. Ah!" And then there's an explosion, and a lot of buildings get destroyed. And the love interest is mildly singed, but still beautiful, and stands up and kind of takes the wisps of hair, takes the wisps of hair and pushes it out from behind, in front of their eyes, and looks for the hero and finds the hero, and the hero is barely alive, but alive, and still has the power. And then the hero says, "Did we do it? Did we make a difference?" That's actually from Star Trek Generations. Kirk's last words. I've been back and forth over what to do about this podcast. What to do about this podcast. Because on the one hand, I probably should be interviewing other people, and it should be something that provides information and content that people can digest, digestible content. Because right now, all it really is me just riffing into a microphone for 30 to 60 minutes, which might be 30 to 60 minutes too long, depending on the mood that I'm in. Because when I'm super depressed, it's 30 to 60 minutes of a therapy session in which no one is answering. And now there's this awkward dead space where I normally expect some kind of reaction, but there's no reaction because nobody's here right now. Nobody is here, and the other thing I'm doing is I'm noticing how I'm not speaking at full voice. I'm holding my voice back because I'm doing this in my apartment, and I know there are people walking around outside, and I don't want them to judge me. So my fear of being judged is affecting this podcast. Maybe that's the reality behind why quantum mechanics works. Actually, right now, my neighbor is outside, walking his dog. Oh, no, he's about to go. Okay, I feel better. Anyway, quantum physics. I think this is quantum physics. There's this particle wave, the whole particle wave thing, that if particles are observed, they're waves, but if they're not observed, they're particles, or vice versa. And maybe that's why. Maybe, even at the molecular level, particles and waves of light are self-conscious. And if a particle is being observed, it's saying, hey, I'm just trying to make my way through the universe here, okay? Hey, there's no need to... Don't stop looking at me. Stop it. Stop looking at me. Entirely possible. So every now and then, when I record at my desk, my computer is still crashing. So I will click save and stop recording every few minutes or so. Just in case, because if the thing dies on me, think of all of the genius that will be lost. Me just rolling around with weird voices. But I think the other thing I'm trying to figure out is how to get to the speed of creativity. And what I mean by that is getting to the point where I'm not thinking and I'm not observing myself. I'm just allowing the creative process to flow through me and turning into somebody who sounds like a guru. Be creative. Creativity flows through you. Creativity. Let the creativity flow through you. Reminds me of an episode of Star Trek Deep Space Nine where Jake Sisko, budding writer Jake Sisko, encounters an alien who gets her energy from people being creative. So he's writing, and then she's sucking up his energy. And finally, Captain Sisko discovers this and tries to stop it, but she just floats away. They don't defeat her, they don't arrest her, she just succeeds. And Jake comes out of it with a pretty good novel. Was it an episode? Not so much an episode as a meditation, I would say. Listen, for every episode of Deep Space Nine where there's a huge battle, there's an episode where, then this is literal, there's an episode where they lose Captain Sisko's desk, and they have to find it again. And it involves, I believe, putting in a requisition order. So there's a lot going on in Federation Outpost Deep Space Nine. A lot going on. But anyway, I want to get to the point where I'm not thinking so much when I'm on stage, when I'm writing. Just getting to the point where all of this is flowing freely. Did I say flowing freely? Yes, I did. Flowing freely. It brings me to the 3 guideposts of creativity. Guidepost number 1, make sure your bowels are clear. It's very hard to be creative on a constipated bowel. Guidepost number 2, believe. Believe in the source. Guidepost number 3, be rich. Okay, well that's depressing. But at any rate, I want to just this is a freewheeling conversation. That's all this is, a freewheeling conversation. And if you're still listening 6 minutes and 53 seconds into this, I applaud you for it. I applaud you for listening in. But then the thing is this creativity, or is this just randomness that has no place in any situation and really doesn't even say anything? Am I hiding behind this pseudo James Joyce attempt to just be stream of consciousness? Am I hiding my true feelings? What are my true feelings in this moment? I'll tell you what my true feeling is in this moment. I'm not breathing. And now that I am breathing, I'm feeling a lot of fear and hopelessness for the future. The world that I wanted to be an adult in no longer exists. That's what's blowing my mind. I'm a kid. I'm watching the movies. I'm reading all about Hollywood. I'm watching the Oscars. I'm like, that's the world that I want to be in, and that world is dead. This is not a world where there are only 3 networks. This is not a world where there's TV and movies, and there's no bridge in between. It's not a world where there's less content. It's a world where there's more content. It's a world where there's so much content that it's entirely possible to be the successful star of a TV series and have a massive majority of the population of the country not even know who you are. Which begs the question, what is fame in this world versus fame in the previous world? And I guess am I saying that what I wanted was fame? Not so much. Not really. I think what I want is to be able to make a living doing this, as opposed to having any kind of a day job, and admiration from peers, genuine admiration from peers, and not even and not like not out of because I have a narcissistic need to be loved, although that is a huge part of it, but more an acknowledgement that what I'm doing has value. And when I think about it, the irony is that I've been doing stand-up for 10 years now. I've performed with a lot of national touring headliners, and they have all said, yes, you're doing good. And I believe them when they are saying that. I don't think they're blowing smoke up my keister. And yet, I still have this feeling of inadequacy. So now the real question is how to deal with this feeling of inadequacy. And I don't think that the answer maybe has anything to do with anything that happens in the external world. And what I really need to do is be working on myself and achieve some kind of enlightenment whereby I prefer neither success nor failure. And at that point of achieving enlightenment, that is when I will achieve success. Of course, the harder I try to achieve the enlightenment, hoping that I will achieve success once I achieve enlightenment, the farther away enlightenment becomes. Well, that's a lot right there. That's a lot to chew on, isn't it? That is a lot to chew on. That's why you have to follow my 3 guideposts of creativity. Guidepost number 1, punch yourself once a day. Guidepost number 2, kick yourself twice a day. I did karate for a few weeks in middle school, and I stopped because of joint pain. I stopped because of joint pain. You understand that? Joint pain. So I wasn't even getting injured by getting punched. I was injured by I was injuring myself by punching myself. There's a superpower. If I can cause people who are trying to punch me to hurt themselves. Give people arthritis. He has the ability to give people arthritis. He's our newest member of the X-Men. Cortizoid. I'll defeat you, Cortizoid. Oh, wow, where did that come from? Where did that back pain come from? Ooh, I gotta sit down. Fun moment there, I would say. But not as fun as slip and slides. My cousins had a slip and slide. I remember the slip and slide. The slip and slide is an enjoyable activity for about 15 minutes when I'm 6 years old, and then it is something I never have to do again. But we, as a human race, are obsessed with situations where gravity seems to be less of an issue, like downhill skiing or slip and slides or water slides, where for a few seconds we can move without having to do anything. We're so attracted to that. Oh, you mean for 30 seconds I can ski down this mountain? I don't have to walk? Fantastic. Sign me up. I'm there. Do I miss skiing? That's a good question. I was home visiting recently. A relative of mine did remind me that when I was younger, I did like the snow. And what I wanted to tell him is that's because I didn't know what a California was until I was older. And then when I experienced California and the notion that I could be warm in November, I realized this is what I like. Instead of running around in the snow, I can sit here and be warm. And that, my friends, is preferable. I'm getting thirsty. I am debating whether or not to go and get some ginger ale from the... I already talked myself into it. I'm getting the ginger ale. I am getting the ginger ale. It's happening. I've now taken a swig of the ginger ale, which means for the next few minutes there will probably be a degree of burping happening as I'm continuing this podcast. But the question is, I keep going back and forth. Other people tell me I should have guests. Sometimes I think to myself, maybe I should have guests. What is this podcast offering? That's what I don't understand. If I'm just freely talking about my emotions, maybe that's what it is. Maybe what this is a meditation. This is me getting to the point where I stop thinking, I get out of my head and I get into my emotions. And it's a forum, if you will, for me to talk these things out. And if you want to listen in, that's fine. But if you don't, that's okay. It's not about getting more listeners. Even though it is more about getting more listeners. Why else would I be doing a podcast? Another sweet, sweet taste of ginger ale. That is... this one does have sugar in it. The other ginger ale I got didn't have any sugar in it. It just had corn syrup, which is sugar enough for me. Which is sugar enough for me? Which is sugar enough for me? By the way, whenever I feel anything that's a little bit off, I'm going, coronavirus? Is it happening? Like right now, there's a momentary hot flash. And it turns out it's just menopause. Nothing to worry about. But see, right now, here's the thing. Here's where I'm judging myself right now because I'm asking myself, am I just being bubbly? There's burp number 1. For the sake of being bubbly, or am I being bubbly to cover a deeper emotional situation? A deeper emotional situation of some kind. Well, let's dig deeper. Emotionally, where am I? I'm never too far away from rage. Rage is always right around the corner. You know, if my emotional core is Burbank, rage is Glendale. By the way, that has nothing to do with those regions. If I lived in Glendale, I would have said if my emotional core was Glendale, my rage is Burbank. Not trying to make a statement at all about anybody who lives in either one of those two cities. I want to make that very clear. That was purely a geographical analogy. Purely, all right? Don't read into it. Stop reading into it. I told you I was always near rage. The rage always exists. I'm tired of onions. I don't know where that even came from. But I am tired of onions. And here's what I mean by that. I love the taste of onions, but I do feel like sometimes at restaurants, onions are used too generously. Onions are too much of an answer to the question of how do we make this dish look bigger and more expansive than it is. It's like ordering the fajitas. Going to Chili's, ordering the fajitas. Am I singling out Chili's? No. This is just as an example. They bring out the fajitas, and it just seems like there's just a little bit more onions than there is chicken. And you know what? Maybe I'm not an expert. Maybe I'm not the one who's back there actually measuring the amounts of these things. I'm definitely not the one measuring the amounts of these things, but I sense distinctly that they're beefing it up with the onions and skimping on the chicken just a little bit. And I don't approve. Stop using the onion. Stop using the onion as a chicken shield. Stop it. I see what you're doing. The onion is not that character in the movie who jumps in front of the protagonist and says, "You run, I'll hold them off." Yeah, they never survive when that happens. "You run, I'll hold them off." "No, Jim, you can't." "Yes, you run, I'll hold them off." And they never hold them off. Occasionally they hold them off, but usually they don't hold them off. Maybe if you released all of your power now instead of the end of the movie, I wouldn't have to try to hold them off, fail, and then die. Just maybe. You run, I'll hold them off. But talking about depression, which is really the blanket. Depression's an abstract. I think the emotions underneath depression tend to be despair, rage, sadness, grief. And the depression is maybe a way of managing it, a way of tempering it, a way of a circuit breaker so that you don't become overwhelmed with emotion. And the irony is, the more that I allow myself to feel what I want to feel, the better I feel. So the idea that I can become overwhelmed by my own emotions is, in and of itself, a defense mechanism. So here's the question. We're 19 minutes into this, Josh. How am I feeling? Frustrated, because I don't feel like I've solved the problem of how to get more listeners. And I'm also rocking back and forth a lot. And I'm angry at certain people in my life that I don't want to go into right now. Because it doesn't matter. I'm always angry at something. I'm always afraid of something. I'm always worried about something. There's always this... my mind is always going. So maybe let's just see what happens if I stop my mind. There's another burp. But if I just label every thought as thinking, I'm thinking about Adobe Premiere, thinking. The refrigerator's making a noise, thinking. Richie Rich, where did that come from? Why is Richie Rich popping out of nowhere? Why was Richie Rich ever even a thing? Did it start as a comic or a cartoon? My understanding is that it's a rich white kid. That's Richie Rich. That's the comic. People follow that. Oh, I want to see what happens to this person who has everything. I think I want Calvin and Hobbes to encounter Richie Rich, and please tweet at me if this happened. I'm sure maybe this was a crossover. I want Calvin and Hobbes to meet Richie Rich one day, and I want Calvin to say, "Listen, you need to have a lot more appreciation for what you have." You know, this tiger. You know how much it costs to maintain a tiger? I mean, for you this would be nothing, but I have to have 5 paper routes. So don't you Richie Rich yourself into my good graces, sir. You don't know what it means to live. You don't know how hard it is. Calvin was the kid, right? And Hobbes was the tiger? Yes. I think there was a period of time where Hobbes did sue because he wanted it to be Hobbes and Calvin, but he lost the suit. Something about tigers not having the same rights as humans. Which, by the way, is going to come back to bite us. No pun intended. These pauses remind me of whenever I listen to the classical station, there's one particular announcer who will always make a joke and then pause, but there's no one in the studio. There's no one in the studio. There's no way he can hear laughter. And what I love about him is that he's assuming that we are laughing. Do you know how much confidence that takes? And you could say that Mozart was a real classical gas. I'm just going to wait a few more seconds to let Maud in Southern California finish laughing at that. All right, and it's back to K, Classical 265 Mark IV. I wish I had that confidence. I really do. Oh, I want to share something I saw with you yesterday. But first I'm going to save this and then come right back. Okay, here's what I saw yesterday. I saw a person walking in the neighborhood with a pair of ski poles, using the ski poles to propel him or herself forward as they were walking. And this was beautiful. It was a beautiful sight to see. It was a beautiful sight to see somebody using poles on a cement path that was put there so that people would not need to use poles. That's kind of why we paved everything. Because there was a period there in human history where nothing was paved, and it was, difficult to walk around. And we said, let's pave everything and make it easier. And we did, and it is. And nevertheless, this person perseveres. And you know what? I'm sitting here ridiculing this person. But what I really want to be doing is applauding this person, because I would not have the strength of fortitude or the confidence to do that in public. Now, I imagine that they're doing it because it's part of an exercise routine of some kind. It helps them, I guess, walk faster. I would not want to do that, because if I did that, my fear would be that I looked crazy. And again, why am I afraid of what other people? Why am I afraid of what other people think? Why am I afraid of what other people think? Can you explain this to me? Why am I afraid? Why? After all these years, what am I afraid is going to happen? The kids from kindergarten are going to come and make fun of me. They're all probably dead or miserable at this point. Well, I would imagine more likely miserable than dead, but you know what I mean. This is the one nice thing about getting older. The older I get, the less I care. I'm finishing off this ginger ale. Probably not very good for me. Here's the problem with lunch. Nothing I have I want to eat. And there's nothing out there that I even want to eat, but I'm hungry. This is the weird one. I'm hungry, but nothing out there feels right. Which translates me to just getting something at Starbucks. When in doubt, Starbucks it out, you know what I mean? All right, we're 26 minutes in. I'm feeling tired right now. Tired from what? What have I been doing? I've been talking. How is this exhausting? It's not like I've been walking through the neighborhood with ski poles, which enable me to walk faster? But I applaud that person. I applaud that person for walking at the speed they were walking with those poles. I wanted to get a closer look, but they were walking too fast. I mean, it really was working. Similarly, I would, if I really wasn't so self-conscious, I might walk around with a cape. I might wear a cape. Maybe. Problem with a cape is you got to have the body. And my body does not. If I put on a cape, I just look like Dracula's accountant. Accountula. Wow, Accountula. That could be the name of this podcast. I think that's going to be the name of this podcast. If I put on a cape, I may as well be a 13-year-old boy. I'm a 13-year-old boy wearing a cape pretending to be a superhero, which is fine for a real 13-year-old boy, a problem for a 40-year-old man. It's 27 minutes. I'm feeling good. I feel like we're, I accomplished what I wanted to accomplish here today on this particular podcast. I would like a phenomenal ending. I really want an ending that knocks it out of the park. Of course, the more that I want an ending that knocks it out of the park, the more I'm thinking about it. And if I'm thinking about it, I'm not allowing the creative process to flow through me. So I got to use one of the guideposts. Maybe if I punch myself in the face, it'll happen. Or maybe if I relax my body and just label my thoughts as thinking. I'm seeing a purple. Oh, you know what? That's what we'll talk. I tried watching, I think the first ever episode of Gundam, which is this anime about these giant robots. Well, no, it's not about the robots. It's about the humans are living in deep space and they're fighting amongst each other, and they build these robots, these giant humanoid robots that are, 15 stories tall, that are piloted by one person. And basically, the bad guy robots are attacking, and so this teenager, who's the son of this engineer who built this new powerful Gundam, happens to come across the manual for how to use the Gundam, runs into the Gundam, activates it by quickly flipping through the manual. Although they do establish at the beginning that he's very computer savvy. He's good with computers. So we buy that he can immediately know how to operate a Gundam. And he proceeds to destroy the two bad guy Gundams, and kind of stumbles his way into being a Gundam pilot, basically, is where we're going with this. and they're these giant robots. And this particular Gundam has a laser sword, a very cool laser sword. This was the Gundam, I believe, that was in Ready Player One. And that moment where he summons the Gundam. And it was, I got to say, it was, granted, the cartoons must be, 30, 40 years old now. But I was beginning to get into it. There's something, I don't know what it is, but there's something that is so appealing to me about the idea of getting into a giant human-sized robot and kicking butt. It's just so it just feels so satisfying. And maybe what it is, maybe it stems from the desire that I, because maybe I want to be a bigger person than I am. And this is a way of achieving that to the nth degree. I just think that it would be difficult. It just seems like it seems like a lot of work to build a giant robot like that, to get it to work properly. And even then, I mean, is the human form the most logical form for a robot to take? I mean, maybe a spider would be better if you think about it. I mean, why only have, 4 appendages when you can have 8? Why does it have a head? It must have something to do with the notion of directly expanding upon existing human strength. So it's a way for a human to be more powerful. A version of Superman, only instead of the same body, you just get inside of a bigger body. And it feels good and it's cool. I think that's why they did it. And I think that's the scene they need in that episode of Gundam. We've built this new machine, a giant humanoid robot that we can use to save the day. Sir, why is it a giant humanoid robot? Because it's cool. Because it's cool, my friends. Because it's cool. No, it was great. They built a giant robot that looks exactly like the toy they're about to sell. And no. All right, Josh. All right. Let's not be snippy. I did stop watching it. It was 2 hours. I stopped watching it about a half hour through. I stopped watching it after he got into the thing, after he got into the machine and blew up the first 2 robots. I went, okay, I'm satiated. I'm feeling good. I'm feeling like I got it. I saw the robot destruction I needed to see. I'm good to move on. But the other thing about this cartoon was how I didn't realize this, but it was surprisingly violent and they were reacting to it in a very adult sort of way. I mean, people were, one of the main characters' parents gets bombed and dies in the first 15 minutes, and they stop and they register that, and she's crying, and then the protagonist says, you've got to keep running, I'll hold them off. He didn't say I'll hold them off because he's the protagonist. The protagonist never says keep running, I'll hold them off. The protagonist says, no, you keep going, I'm right behind you. And then he gets into the Gundam and he pushes 3 buttons and destroys 2 other robots with 0 training. Whenever in all these Japanese anime or in any cartoon, any version where there's a giant robot, the giant robot always has a head, and occasionally the head has a face. And the face, of course, is very solemn and serious. But I think it's time for a giant robot with a head that's got a goofy smile on it. Just a big toothy grin. Hey there. Kind of and not even a symmetrical grin, kind of an off asymmetrical grin. You can kind of see the tongue a little bit. Just frozen. It's kind of like the grin that a baby has when it's farting. Because I think if the opposing robots see that, they'd go, "What? Why did they do that? What does that mean? Do you think that means something?" That's very off-putting. That's an off-putting thing. They sort of did that in Attack on Titan. The giant titans sometimes have these strange grins. Yeah, they did do that with Attack on Titan. But those were giants. Those weren't robots. There's a difference. When it's an otherworldly creature that has a weird grin, yeah, that's kind of disarming. But if it's something that was built, if there was a guy named Jim who carved a grin into the side of a robot, is the robot ready? No, we got to put the fake grin on it. Why not other accessories? Why not other accessories on this robot? Why not a tie? A necktie. Thin or fat depends on the current zeitgeist. Maybe they create, one for each style. How about a robot with an earring? One earring. I would like to see that. I would like to see a robot with a little bit of accoutrement. What about, you know what I want? Here's what I want. And here's how we close the podcast. I need to see a giant robot wearing a Hawaiian shirt. That's what we need. That is so what we need. A giant robot wearing a giant Hawaiian shirt. He is here to kick butt and then go to a barbecue. This is a giant robot who knows how to handle. This is a giant robot who can go to a backyard barbecue, flip the burgers, and knows exactly how to cook them. And destroy aliens, kaiju, and bad guy robots. That's what we need. See? I knew if I just put my mind to it, I could find what I needed. All right, that's the end of this.